It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman, and this show is brought to you by emailrevealer.com. You can go to emailrevealer.com, get an autographed copy of my book, How to Become a Successful Private Investigator, but also to all different kinds of services like the online infidelity investigation. You give us your spouse's email address, we trace it back to online dating websites and personal ads, catfish investigations, asset searches, background reports, all kinds of different services, emailrevealer.com. I'm really excited about today's show. We have a real hero, Juanita Broaddrick, and she just came out with a new book, You'd Better Put Some Ice on That, How I Survived Being Raped by Bill Clinton. This book is just fresh off the presses. The ink's barely dry. It's barely a week old. So finally we can have, she's been on the show before, but I wasn't available that weekend. We had William Ramsey do the interview. So my first time meeting Juanita Broaddrick, and it's a pleasure. Juanita, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, Ed.
God bless you. I love that voice. That's okay. Tell us about yourself. Before we get into all this stuff about this book and these Clintons, tell us about who is Juanita Broaddrick. Tell us about yourself first.
Yeah, Juanita Broaddrick worked for years in her own business. I was a registered nurse, and I owned and operated 2 nursing facilities. One was for geriatrics, and the other was for severely handicapped and mentally disabled children. And it was a wonderful life. I enjoyed it. It was great. I sold my facilities back in 2008, and now I'm retired and stay on the tennis court a lot of times.
Ah, very nice. And you still live in Arkansas?
Yes, still in my same hometown.
Okay, God bless you. And I bet grandkids, you got grandkids?
Oh, I've got one most adorable grandchild that ever lived. Of course, everybody always says that, but he's just the light of my life, he and his father.
Okay, great. You got the best one. Okay. Juanita Broaddrick got the best one.
My son, my son is an attorney here.
Okay. Well, that must come in handy, right, with all the problems you've had. Now, especially when Andrea Mitchell said discredited regarding my story, and he had to write a letter to NBC. That Andrea Mitchell, it's so disappointing. Someone with such a long career would just sell herself out to the Clintons like that, the way, especially during the campaign. Very disappointing. But Juanita Broaddrick, you can find her story at juanitabroaddrick.com. And it's not spelled like the Broaddrick like everybody thinks. It's Broaddrick. And if you're in Vegas here, by the way, too, I got a big Vegas audience. She's going to be in town next week, the 19th and the 20th, first for a meet and greet over at the Trump Hotel, and then over at 555 East Washington at the Veterans Memorial. So looking forward to that. That'll be coming up on January 19th and 20th. Now, the book just came out. How's the book is just, the ink's still wet. Okay. How's the book being received?
Oh, it's being received great if we could just get cooperation from Amazon. That's my biggest problem right now, is them holding orders and pulling my post and having to put a second one up. But we're still working on that.
Yeah, explain what's going on with that, because you'd think this would be like they wouldn't dare touch this, but it seems like they're running some interference. Yeah.
It's so confusing to us, Ed. We were rated in the top 10 2 days ago, and then all of a sudden it just disappeared. And we keep asking why. We had to rush and get a second one up. But when we put the second one up, it lost all of its bestseller ratings, and they will not tell us why they pulled it. It's absolutely so discouraging.
But we know that Jeff Bezos is a supporter of the Clintons, and we know about their influence around the world, and things disappearing around the Clintons is commonplace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's sad to say, isn't it?
Yeah. So tonight you're going to be on Hannity, though, Sean Hannity, right?
Well, no, I won't be on the TV. I'll be on his, we're going to tape at 1, and then he'll run it just shortly later. I'm not for sure. It's just on his radio.
Well, excellent. You'll definitely sell a lot of books there. Get you right back up there at number 1 for, what's it called? True.
Brand,
yeah.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
Give us an idea. Now, how did you first run across the Clintons and Bill Clinton? way back in the 70s?
Well, back when I was running my nursing home, I got involved in his gubernatorial campaign, and I began to volunteer, put out yard signs, and hand out information. I was really taken with this man. We all thought he was going to do such great things for Arkansas, and I wanted to support him. And then one day, the office in Little Rock, his state campaign office, called and asked if he could come by my nursing home on a campaign tour in our area. And that's when I first met him. And we had pictures taken, and it was real exciting for us to have him at our nursing home. And so he came over and began to talk to me after we had the photo ops, and began to talk to me about my nursing home. And, Ed, a light bulb went off in my head. I thought, I need to tell him how we're struggling in Arkansas. The reimbursement rate was so low and couldn't begin to cover all the costs we were experiencing. And he just sort of lit up and said, I'd like to talk to you about that sometime. He said, are you ever in Little Rock? And I told him, yes, I'd be there in 2 or 3 weeks at a nursing home seminar that I was bringing my director of nursing to. And so that's how it all evolved and how I ended up in Little Rock.
Now, he was running for governor at the time. He wasn't even governor yet.
No, he was Attorney General.
Attorney General, okay. Now, did you think he was coming on to you at that point, the whole meeting in Arkansas?
Oh, no, I didn't know anything about his reputation, and it was just beginning to develop at that time. I'm sure there were stories out there, but I'd never heard them. I was very respectful of him and thrilled at the opportunity to get to talk to him.
And at the time, you were a Democrat, huh?
Yes.
And
yes,
so,
very much so.
And it was this experience with Bill Clinton that's totally turned you off the Democrats?
No, it didn't then. In fact, I supported and gave a lot to the Obama campaign when he was running against Hillary. I would do anything to be Hillary.
I can imagine that, yeah.
So, I got very involved in his first term and donated a considerable amount, probably $5,000. To his campaign. And but then by the time the second campaign came around, I didn't even vote. I was so disillusioned with him.
Yeah, that was a disappointment, yeah. But don't tell Hannity you donated to Obama. It's going to explode. His head will explode.
Ed, I would have done anything to defeat her,
And I hear you. I was a big Bernie supporter in the last one, and the Clintons totally stole. They totally robbed Bernie here in Nevada. It was outrageous what went on there. Now, so you go to Little Rock and you run into Clinton again. Give us an idea what happened at that occasion.
Sure. My nurse, Norma Rogers, and I went down on April the 24th, 1978, checked into our hotel, and then the next morning when we got up, I called his campaign office, and a young lady answered, and I told her who I was, and she said, "Oh, Miss Vicky," she said, "Mr. Clinton said if you ever called, be sure and call this number," which I immediately called, and he answered the phone. And I told him, I said, I'm here, and I brought all these. I worked on graphs and everything imaginable to show him what the costs were and what we were being reimbursed. I was so excited about showing this to him. And so I said, can we run over at noon to your campaign headquarters, because we'll be off for an hour from the seminar. And he said, I'm not going to be there today. He said, I'll just come to your hotel now. He said, we can meet down in the coffee shop. And I was thrilled. I thought, well, great. He's coming over here. So I told Norma, I said, you go on to the meeting, and as soon as I'm through in the coffee shop, I'll be right on to the meeting. So that's how that transpired. And he said, I'll call you when I get there. Well, lo and behold, he called about 10 or 15 minutes after Norma left for the seminar. And he said, Juanita, he said, there's so many people down here and it's so crowded, and there's even reporters down here. Can we just have coffee and discuss this in your room? And now we're talking 40 years ago. I'm sure I was a little alarmed. But Bill Clinton was the Attorney General of the state of Arkansas, and I didn't think I had anything to fear from him. So I told him, yes, that'd be just fine. I'll order coffee to the room. And he said, well, I'm talking to someone. I'll be up shortly. So the coffee came, and shortly thereafter, a knock on the door, and he came in. I showed him over to the table by the window that looked out onto the river. It's just a beautiful view. And started to pour our coffee, coffee we never drank. And things progressed from there. He was very cordial, very nice in the beginning. And I started to pick up my file to start to show him things. And then he began to point down to the river at a little old dilapidated building. And he started saying, when I become governor, not if, but when I become governor, I'd like to restore that. It was an 1800 jailhouse. And he said, I think that would be an interesting visitor site. And so he motioned for me to come over to him. And when I did, he sort of put his arm around my shoulder to point to the building. And that's when I started to get uncomfortable. And that's when things started to progress. He started to try to kiss me, and I pushed him away. But the man wouldn't take no for an answer. It got worse from there.
And you were a married woman.
Yes. But, I was also a woman who was about to get into a divorce and having an affair with another man. And I tried to explain that to him that, no, this is not what I want. I have things going on in my life, and I came here to show you this information. But that didn't help, Ed, at all.
Now, I've talked to a lot of the people who knew Clinton back in those days, and there's all this stuff you hear about Mena, Arkansas, and, Iran-Contra and all that funny business going on. Some people say that he was using cocaine at the time. Do you think he might have been using coke?
One of the ladies, and I can't say her name because she was having an affair with him around the time of the rape, and afterwards. And I spoke to her one time and I said, why on earth would he do that to me when it was such a violation, and he had other women that he could go to for that such thing? I mean, I didn't want it. And she said, he was using so much cocaine at the time. So, but I don't know if that's true. I have no idea. That's just what she told me.
And this is one of the well-known women that was associated with Clinton at the time? Like her name is public?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I think I've talked to all of them. It does seem like he was using a lot of coke at the time. Okay, so now...
Go ahead.
The incident was brutal and violent, right? There was no romance in this whatsoever.
Oh, my God. No. Even being a registered nurse, I had never known anyone close to me or anywhere that had suffered anything like this. This was completely unknown to me and violent. And, and after the rape was over, I was set up on the side of the bed, still in shock, not believing what had happened to me. And I'm sitting there crying, and he looks at me and with this look of frustration and bewilderment and says, he says, I'm sterile. I had mumps when I was a child. Now, if that wasn't the most bizarre thing you could say to someone that you just raped, I wasn't concerned about anything like that. I was concerned about being so violently raped.
And during the attack, he was doing this thing where he was biting on your lip as well as pushing you down at the same time. Yeah.
Right. He pushed down. In fact, I had bruises on my left shoulder where he would push down, and then he would start to bite my lip if I yelled or if I resisted. My lip, by the time this horrible incident was over, was swollen, probably twice the size. It ended up being much larger and was bleeding. And there I sat on the bed, and he had no remorse. It was just like it was an everyday occurrence. And he looks at me puts on